Relax. It's nothing. Stop making a big deal. My sister laughed, light and careless, tapping the rock against the glass like a joke no one else understood. Someone chuckled. Someone else reached for cake. My daughter didn't move. My name is Phoebe Lawson, I'm 40. I stood in my parents' living room with my hands folded too tight, watching my 16-year-old daughter stare at what used to be her graduation gift. The handcrafted piece lay shattered on the coffee table, split into bright veins of glass, the rock resting beside it like punctuation. We had saved for years, insured it, argued about colors and trims. Dad cleared his throat. He does that when he's furious but trying to stay gentle. Mara, he said, calm as a lake before rain. You'll compensate. That was $15,000. Mara sighed, bored. Dad, please. She's a kid. She'll forget. She didn't look at my daughter. She never does. The room smelled like frosting and lemon cleaner. My heels slid on a crumb, a small, stupid thing that grounded me. My flaw is that I still believe words can soften damage. Dad stood. Slowly. He reached behind the door and brought back a thick metal pipe, rusted and heavy. He didn't raise it. He placed it beside the broken glass. We're going to talk about accountability, he said. Silence spread. Even the clock held its breath. Mara's smile thinned, just a hairline crack. And in that reflection, sharp and bright, I realized something irreversible had begun to surface. The truth doesn't shout. It waits, heavy and undeniable, until everyone can see it at once. We would all remember this moment, the way glass teaches you how fragile pride really is, and how consequences arrive quietly, carried not by force, but by witnesses, memory, and a silence that refuses to disappear ever again. Mara laughed again, but it came out wrong this time. Too loud. Are you threatening me now? She said, finally looking at Dad, then at the pipe, like it was a prop someone forgot to remove. Dad didn't answer. He sat back down instead, slower than before, palms flat on his knees. That scared me more. He had already decided something. My daughter shifted beside me. She tucked her hands into the sleeves of her hoodie, the way she does when she's overwhelmed. One thread dangled loose at her wrist. I wanted to fix it. I didn't. Apologize, Dad said, not loudly. Just clear. Mara scoffed. For what? It was an accident. I swallowed. The word accident bounced around the room, hit the walls, fell flat. We all saw her pick up the rock. We all heard the crack. Dad leaned forward. Accidents don't involve laughter. That landed. My brothers stared at the floor. Mom pressed her lips together, twisting her wedding ring until her knuckles went white. No one defended Mara. No one ever had to before. Mara crossed her arms. You're all being dramatic. It's money. You can replace it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Replaceable. Like the nights my daughter stayed up practicing, like the pride she wore walking across that stage, like the trust she had in family. Dad stood again, but this time he didn't touch the pipe. He picked up one shard of glass instead. It caught the light, scattered it across the ceiling. This, he said, is what happens when you treat people like they're disposable. He set the shard down gently. The care in that gesture hurt. Mara's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, distracted, thumb hovering. Dad watched her do it. His eyes hardened, not with anger, but resolve. If this ever happened to you, say same in the comments, my daughter whispered to me. So softly, only I heard. And I knew then, this wasn't about money anymore. It was about lines finally being drawn, and who would still be standing when the room went quiet again. Mara slid her phone into her pocket, chin lifted. So what, Dad? You're going to scare me into paying? She said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. This is ridiculous. Dad didn't rise to it. He reached for the folder on the sideboard, the one Mom keeps warranty papers in, sorted by year. He opened it with care, like ceremony. Receipts rustled. Dates. Signatures. Proof. You signed as witness, Dad said, tapping a page. When we bought it. You joked about how fancy it was. Mara blinked. Once. That doesn't mean anything. It means you knew its value, he replied. And you knew exactly what you were doing. My daughter shifted closer to me. I felt her shoulder press into my arm, a quiet request for gravity. I stayed still. I've learned that sometimes holding space matters more than filling it. Mom finally spoke. Mara, just say you're sorry. Her voice cracked on the word just. Mara laughed again, but it was thinner now. Sorry you're all so sensitive. The air went brittle. Dad closed the folder. He didn't raise his voice. I asked for compensation because it's right. You refused because you don't think consequences apply to you. My brother looked up then. That's not fair, he said, not to Dad, but to Mara. The room recalibrated around that sentence. Mara's jaw tightened. She glanced at the door, calculating. Dad noticed. He reached for the pipe, not to lift it, but to slide it further away, off the table, out of reach. Control returned to the room. We'll do this properly, Dad said. Insurance. Police report. Small claims if needed. Mara froze. You wouldn't. Dad met her stare. I already have. The clock ticked again. My daughter exhaled, a breath she'd been holding too long. And in that sound, soft and shaky, I felt the glass inside me settle, not healed, but aligned, into something sharp enough to finally reflect the truth back at her. Mara's laugh died halfway out of her mouth. Police, she said. Over a stupid gift? Dad nodded once. Over destruction of property. Over intent. Mom sank into the armchair, palms pressed together like she was praying for rewinds. Frank, she murmured, but Dad didn't look at her. He was watching Mara the way you watch ice you know will crack. Mara turned to me then. Phoebe, she said, softer, performative. Tell him he's overreacting. I felt every ice shift. My daughter's fingers brushed mine, tentative. I thought about the night Mara borrowed my car and returned it empty, how I'd swallowed my anger, because family. About the way she'd always tested how much space she could take before someone said enough. I won't, I said. My voice surprised me, steady, low. You broke something she earned. Mara's face tightened. She's 16. And she trusted you, I replied. Silence stretched. Dad reached into his pocket and set his phone on the table, screen up. An email thread glowed, timestamps, attachments. Insurance. Appraisals. Photos taken minutes after the damage. Prepared. Thoughtful. Unavoidable. You documented this? Mara asked, a tremor slipping through. I did, Dad said. Because this isn't the first time you've laughed something off. My brother cleared his throat. I'll back Dad, he said. If it comes to that. Mara looked around, counting allies and finding none. Her foot tapped once, twice, a nervous till she never noticed. The glass shard on the table caught the light again, throwing a thin line across her wrist like a warning. This is insane, she said, but the word lacked conviction. You're choosing a thing over me. Dad shook his head. We're choosing accountability over comfort. My daughter spoke then, barely above a whisper. I don't want you to be punished. I just want you to care. That landed harder than any threat. Mara swallowed. For the first time, she looked at the mess. Not at us, not at escape routes, but at the broken glass itself, finally seeing her reflection split and multiplied, impossible to ignore. Mara stared at the glass longer than I expected. Her reflection fractured her face into angles she couldn't smooth over. Care? She repeated, quiet now. You think this proves anything? Dad didn't interrupt. He has learned the power of letting people hear themselves. Mara straightened, defensive reflex kicking in. Fine, she said. File your reports. Sue me. But don't act like this is about her feelings. She gestured vaguely at my daughter, as if pointing at a concept, not a person. You've always needed a villain. That stung because it almost sounded true. My flaw, needing clean lines, heroes and villains, pressed against my ribs. I breathed through it. Dad spoke instead. You're right, he said. It's not about feelings. Mara's mouth twitched, triumphant for half a second. It's about patterns, Dad continued. And I'm done enabling them. He slid another document across the table. A bank statement. Highlighted lines. My sister's name. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. You've been dipping into the family maintenance fund, Dad said calmly. Small amounts. Over time. You thought no one would notice. Mara went still. That's not. It is, Mom whispered, finally looking up. Her eyes were wet, but clear. I checked. The room tilted. My daughter squeezed my hand, grounding me again. Glass and money and trust, all fragile, all connected. Mara's voice rose. You're ganging up on me. Dad shook his head. We're drawing boundaries. The pipe sat untouched on the sideboard, forgotten now. It had done its job without moving an inch. Mara laughed once, sharp and brittle. So what? You'll cut me off. Dad didn't answer immediately. He picked up the glass shard again, turned it until it caught the light just right. No, he said softly. We'll stop pretending. He set the shard down. And in that moment, I understood the real cost wasn't $15,000. It was the comfort of denial, finally shattered, impossible to piece back together the way it was before. Mara's shoulders sagged, just a fraction. It was the first honest movement I'd seen from her all night. You can't do this, she said, quieter. I'm your daughter. Dad nodded. And this is me being your father. Mom stood, smoothing her sweater the way she does when she's bracing herself. We're not abandoning you, she said. We're asking you to make it right. Mara looked at the table again, the receipts, the photos, the glass. She exhaled through her nose, slow, calculating. I don't have that kind of money, she said. Not all at once.
Dad didn't flinch.
Then we'll make a plan. Payments.
Written.
Signed. My sister's jaw clenched. Pride wrestled with reality. I saw the moment she chose survival over performance.
Fine, she said.
The word tasted bitter. I'll pay. My daughter lifted her head. I don't need a new one, she said. I just need you to stop acting like I don't matter. That did it. Mara's eyes filled, not with tears yet, but pressure. She nodded once, sharp. I hear you. Dad slid a pen across the table. The scratch of ink sounded louder than it should have. I noticed my daughter's hoodie thread again and finally fixed it, a small repair that felt ceremonial. Mara signed. Each letter looked heavier than the last. When she finished, Dad gathered the papers and placed them neatly into the folder. Order restored, not comfort, not peace, but structure. Sometimes that's the best you get. Mara stood to leave.
At the door, she paused.
I didn't think it would go this far, she said, almost to herself. Dad replied gently, that's how accountability always feels. After she left, the house exhaled. The clock resumed its rhythm. My daughter leaned into me, and I let myself feel tired. The glass still lay broken, but its edges no longer felt dangerous, just honest, reflecting a family finally willing to see itself clearly, even when the image cut. Mom began clearing plates no one had touched. The scrape of porcelain felt too loud. I'll wrap the rest, she said, busying herself, grief disguised as routine. Dad sat back down, older somehow. He rubbed his thumb against a rust stain on the pipe, then pushed it further under the sideboard, out of sight. I hated doing that, he said, not to us but to the room. You didn't, I replied. You chose. My daughter stood and gathered the glass shards with care, using a towel. Each piece chimed softly as it met the others. I want to keep one, she said. Just a small one. Dad nodded. Fair. She chose a sliver shaped like a teardrop, edges smoothed by the towel. She slipped it into her pocket like a talisman. Watching her, I realized she wasn't broken by this. She was calibrated. My brother hugged Dad, awkward and brief. You did good, he said. The front door opened again. Mara hovered in the doorway, keys in hand. I forgot my coat, she muttered. She retrieved it, then paused. Her eyes flicked to the table. Empty now, cleaned, the absence louder than the mess had been. I'll send the first payment tomorrow, she said. Dad nodded once. No forgiveness. No spectacle. Just acknowledgement. After she left again, Mom turned to me. Are you okay? I considered the question. The cracked watch on my wrist, its second hand sometimes stalls, ticked unevenly. I'd meant to fix it for months. I said. Different. But okay. My daughter squeezed my hand. Thank you for not making me apologize for being upset. I kissed her hair, breathing in shampoo and something steadier. The house felt changed, like after a storm when the air clears and everything smells sharper. As we stepped outside, rain began, soft, deliberate. Each drop tapped the porch rail, a quiet applause for a truth finally spoken aloud. The rain followed us home, steady and patient. My daughter pressed her forehead to the car window, tracing drops with her finger. The streetlights blurred, then sharpened again. I kept both hands on the wheel, feeling the quiet settle where the noise had been. At home, we laid the glass pieces on a towel one last time. Not to mourn them, just to acknowledge what had been. My daughter took the teardrop shard from her pocket and placed it on her desk beside her acceptance letters. It caught the lamp light and scattered it gently across the wall. I don't want a replacement, she said. This is enough. I nodded. My cracked watch stalled for a second, then ticked on. I smiled at the imperfection. The next morning, an email arrived. A payment confirmation. No apology attached. Just proof. Dad forwarded it with one line. First step taken. Weeks would pass. Plans would be honored. Boundaries would hold. None of it dramatic. None of it loud. That's how real change arrives. Without an audience. I thought about my sister, about how laughter can be armor and denial can feel like safety. I hoped she'd learn the difference between being loved and being indulged. But that hope no longer felt like my responsibility. My daughter left for school, shoulders back, eyes clear. She didn't carry the weight anymore. I did, and I was fine with that. Mothers learn which burdens to keep and which to lay down. That night, Dad called. We talked about the weather. About nothing. Before hanging up, he said, I should have done this sooner. You did it when it mattered, I replied. I turned off the light. The glass shard glowed faintly in the dark, not sharp now, just honest. And in that quiet truth, we all moved forward, intact, accountable, and finally awake.